All right, we're going to get started. So thank you for coming to my lightning talk today for HashiConf Digital. I am Mike Fraser, co-founder and CEO of Refactr. In today's lightning talk, I'm going to go through CICD pipelines for DevSecops with hybrid cloud. So the first thing is to really kind of define and hone in on what is DevSecops. And for me, DevSecOps is holistic agile automation that seamlessly integrates into cybersecurity, into existing IT and DevOps workflows to make sure that you can really be able to take existing cybersecurity use cases and be able to extend what you may already be doing in DevOps and more agile workflows. The other piece of this is really honing in on the concept of what I've come up with called IT as code. And I love this tweet by Justin Garrison back in 2017 around talking about the OSA model being every layer being software. And really, if it's software defined, it becomes IT as code. And if it's IT as code, you should be able to put it into an agile and iterative process to include cybersecurity and really be able to seamlessly add in use cases that make sense because of the fact that they're software defined and mapping to existing tools that are already currently used in DevOps and applied towards software delivery, and holistically adding in security into the mix. So you don't just have infrastructure as code or configuration as code or security as code. You really have the ability to look at everything as code and put it into a CI/CD pipelining process. And as we continue to modernize, where more and more things become software, we can really hone in on this conceptually, where the IT as code is really an inherent piece of what is DevSecOps. So it's not just AppSec added to DevOps workflows, but it's also this modernization where everything becomes software defined. So I have 4 principles of DevSecOps. The first one is instead of configuring by hand, we continuously automate, and we find what makes sense to automate and also look at the different percentages of what you can automate. Usually you need to start small and adding to it, and especially applied to cybersecurity. But it needs to be continuous. You have to be focused on being able to add security baked in continuously and start taking manual steps and processes and putting them into an iterative process. The second one is instead of manually responding to alerts and events, we create automation that cuts down on labor, overhead, and human error. And really, if we have a machine doing things when it comes to cybersecurity, we can then also create repeatable processes that make it easier to scale out as you are building out your DevSecOps practice and also your approach to CI/CD pipelines. The third is instead of being reactive, we are proactive to use an agile approach for cybersecurity use cases. And really, we have to think about how we can take an agile process and apply it to cybersecurity and be able to tie it in to already what the DevOps and the dev teams are doing to make it as non-disruptive as possible, but also to make sure that you can start adding value from a cybersecurity standpoint into the existing workflows. And the fourth one is instead of configuring security manually, we seamlessly integrate cybersecurity into existing agile IT and DevOps workflows. And it's, again, about being non-disruptive and being able to take manual processes and procedures and turning them into a repeatable process that can be utilized. And the other piece of that is everybody needs to be able to collaborate so that security can now be a part of the process as opposed to being a silo separate from the process. So when we talk about hybrid CI/CD pipelines, you really have to think about the cloud environments and the on-premise environments and how those map to the different tools that we're using. And those tools have to be able to execute. And so with the concept of runners and different platforms out there, from Jenkins to Azure DevOps, GitLab, and even the stuff we're doing at Refactr, it's really about looking at how can I support the existing tools out there so that I can build and create pipelines that I can use both on-premise and in the public cloud. And so the hybrid approach is what most organizations are looking at doing, from the DoD to enterprise. And we really have to be cognizant about what that looks like. And again, supporting seamlessly the other processes in place. So if I can trigger from a Git commit and be able to then have security baked into the process to trigger a tool or a tool or different a chain of tools, then I have the ability to do that. And I really need to also look at everything being modular and applying it where I can, both on-premise and in the public cloud environments, and realizing that you can create CI/CD pipelines for DevSecops use cases that can both work on-premise and in the public cloud. And then you can create specific pipelines that would be applied to a cloud versus on-premise. So something like maybe on-premise, I could do VMware vCloud Director, versus in the cloud where I may be using, AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. And then I can look at, oh, great, I can use Terraform and Vault for that, but other tools I may want for configuration like Ansible, CIS Syscat Assessor. And then what am I doing on-premise? Probably more legacy infrastructure versus cloud native with Kubernetes. So I can determine what I want to do and how I create these, and think about this holistically on how I can apply pipelines, if possible, both on-premise and in the public cloud. So the other piece to think about is being able to map to cybersecurity use cases. So it's really important to think about DevSecops holistically, where you can build pipelines that can tie into other systems, where you'll be able to utilize different tools in the process and have the ability to apply them to different use cases that traditionally are not a automated process, they are manual. And also thinking about how you're trying to build your pipelines out and how those can extend the existing DevOps and agile IT processes, whether that's you already have GitLab or Jenkins internally, or you're using on the ops side a cloud management platform like Morpheus Data or CloudVault. You have to think about how you can then extend and have an agile process for cybersecurity that can be added into the mix, that can map to all kinds of different use cases, not just for cloud native, but also being able to leverage for other things like network automation, compliance, and other things that you would traditionally think about in a DevSecops pipelining process, like AppSec and containers and anything else that's more modern and forward thinking. So to show an example of a DevSecops CI/CD pipeline that maps to a compliance use case, we have to hone in on the ability also to create multiple pipelines and how they can be chained together, and really thinking about the business processes that I want to introduce into the process, even for simple stuff. So if I first start and say, okay, what do I want to create? I want to create an EKS cluster for infrastructure in AWS. And then what are the tools that I want to be able to utilize with that? So I may use Terraform and Vault, but then I may also want to be able to tie in other tools that I could use like kubectl and so on. So I really want to think holistically about creating a pipeline for that particular process and then having it decoupled so it could run on its own. And then I can apply that to other use cases. The same thing with the next step, which is notify, to be able to send a Slack message or create a ticket in ServiceNow. So again, thinking about the business process, so you can also incorporate other things into the mix, like case management that you could possibly use with some of this information longer term. If something comes up and you have this data, you have the ability to tie into other systems that then you can utilize to be able to look at it from an audit trail standpoint, know what's going on at every step inside of a pipelining process, and then have that as a repeatable process where you can have notifications in your process wherever you decide to, and make that something that's always baked into your pipelining process. The third one is assess, where you can run a Syscat scan and produce a compliant report. So you may want to be able to introduce the ability to do Center for Internet Security's scanning with something like Syscat, introducing it into your pipelining process so that you can then be able to map that to the compliance framework that you're trying to map to, and have the ability to have that baked right into your process and be able to apply that pipeline to any sort of use case, whether on-premise or in the cloud. And then the fourth one is the reporting. So the ability to have whatever information gets generated, say from that cybersecurity tool, to be able to then get it to the right stakeholders internally or whomever needs to be able to see this information. And this really enables cybersecurity to be not only a part of the process, but also thinking about this, again, holistically about where you're going to provide information about what happens in the process, because a big piece of cybersecurity is around visibility and minimizing risk and being able to get the information to the right people. So if something comes up, you can analyze it and look at it. And the fourth one is remediate. So the ability to look at taking the data that you get and programmatically having it baked in so that you can remediate in here. So the other piece to this is to look at different content that's out there, like by Mindpoint Group, that has baselines for CIS, and being able to start thinking about how to incorporate automation content that other organizations and vendors are creating out there too, and then introducing that into your pipelining process. So a real world use case of this, I'm going to show you what we're doing at Refactr, but it's really thinking about, can I take all these different pipelining processes and combine them together, leveraging the tools that are out there, and have it in a format that really can be utilized in the real world, not just by cybersecurity teams to get them into an agile process, but also the ability to have the DevOps and developers come in and work together, as opposed to the school of thought of thinking that all developers will become cybersecurity practitioners or all cybersecurity practitioners will become developers or coders. We think about the world as being somewhere in the middle, that you have the ability to meet on both sides and being able to leverage all the different tools that are out there that are traditionally used in DevOps workflows, and being able to start introducing cybersecurity tools into the mix and being able to have it in a repeatable format that's modular, so that you can also iterate on it to get that continuous process that you're looking for, as well as making sure that everything you're doing can be used repeatably, as well as having it utilized both on-premise, if possible, if that's the application, and also in the cloud. And again, figuring out what makes sense for you and your organization and where you're going to start. So really, to kind of summarize all of this, I look at the first thing is you want a visual UI. So any platform that you pick, you want to look at, does this have a UI that I can get cybersecurity in to be able to start working with the developers and DevOps team to be able to start being a part of the process. The second one is every single CICD platform has a shared language where you can utilize the YAML and the runtime. And so thinking about how you couple those together to make it easy for those who create the automation content and those who execute it. The next one is to be able to support open source DevOps and security tools to make sure that you can support what's out there, and then map those to what you are also using from a commercial/third-party standpoint, so that you can create repeatable processes by building these CI/CD pipelines and being able to leverage the existing products that you're already leveraging from different cybersecurity vendors to infrastructure and so on. The next one is sandbox runners. Make sure that you have an environment that is also would cater to cybersecurity, so that you can use the runner in any environment. And really, it's about job execution and having that capability both on-premise and in the public cloud. The next one is integrating with many third-party platforms. So all the different, from Jenkins to Azure DevOps to GitLab, to even what we're doing at Refactr, it's really about figuring out how you integrate into third-party platforms and systems and being able to be a part of the existing workflows, again, whether they're DevOps or IT. And the last one is sharing. So collaboration and sharing is paramount to the success of what this looks like, and being able to future state as everything becomes software defined to really hone in on how that has to help the organization to be able to achieve the business outcomes by mapping that to what you're doing from a technical perspective. And that really is incorporating DevSecops using CI/CD pipelining with different teams to be able to map both on-premise and in the public cloud. So thank you for attending today. Here's my information to contact me. You can reach me at mike@refactr.it. I'm also on Twitter. My handle is ITIsCode, and I'm also on LinkedIn at ITIsCode as well. Really appreciate the time, and thanks HashiCorp for allowing me to have this lightning talk. Take care, everyone.